Hi everyone, I'm Rhonda from Acres of Clay Kitchen, and today we are going to be making squeaky cheese curds. I'm going to bring you along on the process. It's kind of a long process, but hopefully I can walk you through the steps in maybe 10-15 minutes max. This is probably my family's favorite cheese recipe. I've been making it for about 9 years is when I first started this recipe. I've made other cheese curd recipes, but this one happens to be their favorite. It's pretty simple, it just takes a long time to make. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the process as it goes. Some of the things that you're going to need are milk. You can use store-bought milk that is pasteurized and homogenized as long as it's not ultra-pasteurized. Ultra-pasteurized milk does not form into cheese, so I've never used it, never even tried it. This is just what I've read. So you're going to need a gallon of cow's milk. This is going to be cow's milk just because it's cheddar cheese. You're also going to need a starter culture, which is a mesophilic starter culture. These you can purchase online. I will leave a link in the description below of where I purchase mine usually. You're also going to need some rennet. Rennet is what coagulates the milk so that you get your curds. The last thing you're going to need is salt, just for flavor. You can also add flavorings, herbs. The sky's the limit when it comes to flavoring your cheese curds. And actually, I'm making a 4-gallon batch today. I find that it takes just as long to make a 1-gallon batch as it does a 4-gallon batch. So 4-gallon is what it is. I wanted to say something about calcium chloride. Some people may need to use this if you're using store-bought milk, but since I use raw milk, I don't use calcium chloride. I used to use it a little bit, but I find that I don't need it. So if you are using pasteurized milk, you may want to look into getting some calcium chloride. And this is like 1/4 teaspoon to a gallon of milk, and this is going to help firm your curds. With homogenized milk, sometimes you don't get the firm curd like you would with raw milk. So the calcium chloride helps with that, just to give you a firmer curd. So it's up to you if you want to use that. It might be good though. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so I've got 4 gallons of fresh milk in here. This is right out of the cow milk this morning. Just took it out of the tank, but our tank does cool the milk. This is going to be your best friend, is having a thermometer. You can have a digital thermometer, or you can have like just a regular thermometer. I like the digital. They just seem to be a little bit more precise, especially with cheese making. So we're at about 60 degrees. And we are going to warm this up very, very slowly. Now, recommended, I have a very heavy bottom pan here. It's recommended that you heat this in a double boiler, but I find that I don't need to, especially since I don't have another pan bigger than this to fit this in. But as long as I am slowly heating this, and then stirring it quite frequently so it heats evenly, okay? So you just want to keep stirring this. We want to heat this up to 85 degrees. And once we hit 85 degrees, I'm going to bring you back and then I'll show you what we do. But until then, this could take a half hour or so. So like I said, it takes a long time to make this cheese, but it's well worth it. Okay, let's talk about cheese cultures for just a quick moment. I have a variety of different cheese cultures that will work with these cheese curds. But the one that I'm going to be using today, it's called C101, and it basically comes in little packages like this. It's all pre-measured out. So this is going to culture, and it says on here, and you can see this. 1 packet will culture 2 gallons of milk of pasteurized, homogenized milk. If it's raw milk, it will do 4 gallons. So I'm going to be using one of these since it's already pre-measured out. And then I have this one. This one we could use also. It is an MA11, very popular one, just a different strand again. This one here I write down on the paper my notes here. So on the packages, so this one cultures 250 gallons of milk. So for raw milk, I would only need 1/8 of a teaspoon. So to measure that out, you need really small teaspoons, which I do have. And for pasteurized milk, it would be like 1/4 of a teaspoon for 3 gallons. But if you were to buy, if you make a lot of cheese and you were to buy a culture, I would definitely recommend this. I would recommend this. Choose it because it will make a lot of cheese, whereas these little packets will only, I think they usually come in 5 packets, and so then you can only make 5 cheeses. So just a thought there. Okay, so we're at 85 degrees, and this is where we want our milk right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put the starter culture in. We're just going to sprinkle this right over the surface, the top of milk. We're going to just pour it on. Now we let it wait maybe a couple minutes because it has to reconstitute. This is like a freeze-dried culture, so it has to reconstitute itself, and then we're just going to stir it throughout this milk. So I'll give it a couple minutes, and then we'll bring you back and stir it in. It's been a couple minutes, so I'm just going to stir this right in. Okay, you want to give it a good stir because you want that culture to be throughout the milk. Okay, so 85 degrees. We're going to hold this here for 1 hour. Actually, I'm just going to cover it and let it set for 1 hour without disturbing it. We'll put a lid on it to try to hold some of the heat in, but yeah, I'll bring you back after 1 hour. Okay, our 1 hour of letting it sit to ripen is almost up. So I'm getting things ready for adding the rennet. Now, when you add the rennet, which is either by tablet or by liquid form, you have to dilute it. So if it's in a tablet, you have to put it in a little bit of water to dissolve it, but also if it's in a liquid form, you want to dilute it in a tablespoon of cool tap water, anything as long as it's not chlorinated water. Alright, so we dilute this down so that when we pour it in our milk, it's not just concentrated in one area. This helps so we can stir the rennet throughout the milk. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and stir in my rennet. You just want to kind of pour it in throughout, all around, stirring as we go. Now you're just going to want to stir this real good for maybe a couple minutes just to make sure that that rennet is throughout all the milk. And I like using a slotted spoon. I just think it helps move the milk throughout. Now let's settle that milk a little bit. And now we're going to let this sit once again covered for another hour. We're going to wait, come back, check it to make sure that it's got a clean cut or a clean break. And it should. And in 1 hour I'll show you how it coagulated. Alright, 1 hour has been up. We're going to check to see if this gives a clean break. When I put the knife in, you should see it can actually kind of cut the curd. So you can see that I can pretty much just cut this curd and it splits, and my knife comes out clean. So that's what it's called, a clean break. Alright, so at this point, since I do have a clean break, I'm going to go ahead and cut the curd. And to do this, I just basically take a regular knife, I usually start in the middle for whatever reason, I don't know. You can already see that there's some whey separating from the curd. And I'm going to cut these in about 1/2 inch pieces. Try to cut as uniformly as possible because in the end when you go to drain the whey, it's going to drain evenly. My knife is hardly big enough. These are pretty delicate yet, so you'll just get a little cube. Alright, so now that I have all the curds cut, I'm going to let it sit for about 10 more minutes. And this is called the healing process. We're gonna let the cut ends of each curd kind of heal, and that will help them maintain their shape a little bit better. So just let this set for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna start heating it back up. Alright, it's been setting for 10 minutes, and at this point we're just gonna take a look at them. See these curds? They've settled to the bottom because we just let them sit, but now we are going to slowly, over the course of 30 minutes, we're going to raise this temperature to 100 degrees. Again, a lot of people do or recommend that you do this in a double boiler. Again, I am putting my heavy bottom pan on the lowest setting possible on the stove. So we're just gonna heat it this way. It should take about a half hour to climb 15 degrees. Okay? If it's going a little too fast, then just slow it down. But we're gonna stir this every little bit, and this will help release some of the whey from the curds. Now some of these curds look a little big, so I may end up breaking them as I stir it. Almost at 100 degrees, and I've been stirring this pretty much constantly just to make sure that when the curds settle, they like to mat together. So I'm trying to keep them from doing that. And as you can see, these curds definitely have taken on their own shape and size, but when they mat together, then they become one big lump, and you kind of want to keep them from doing that, especially when you're heating it. This is helping to release some of the whey from the curds. So after I get to 100 degrees, I'm going to just let this sit and remain at 100 degrees. We try to keep it at 100 degrees for another 30 minutes. I'm not going to stir it or anything. I'm just going to let it sit and further ripening. Alright, it has been 30 minutes. In my sink I have a pan, another big stock pot, and then on top of that I have a colander, and then I have my cheesecloth lining the colander. And this is going to catch the cheese. Anytime you're working with cheesecloth, just a reminder, make sure it's wet, because it will save you a lot of problems later on. If you don't start with a wet cheesecloth, a lot of times your cheese is going to stick to it, and it's going to be a mess. Curds have all settled to the bottom. You're going to start to see they are little cheese curds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour as much of the whey in as possible. This pot is not as big as this one, so we'll see how much fits. Okay, so what I want is enough whey in the bottom of this pan, but I don't want it to hit the bottom of my colander. Okay, so it's about right where I want it. So the rest of this I'm going to put in another bowl. You can see the mass of cheese curds that it's made, and I'm just gonna plop them in. And at this point you're gonna see that they're all matted together. I'm gonna let this sit and drain for another 30 minutes. I'm just gonna keep it covered like this. I may actually put this lid over it just to kind of hold the heat in and to let this keep draining. So a half hour, and then I'll bring you back and show you the next process. Alright, so I just unearthed this. This is what we got here. Just a big mass of cheese, pretty much. So how I start the cheddaring process is I'm going to just cut this in probably 4s. So you can see what this looks like when you cut it. That's what it kind of looks like. I'm going to cut it in 4 pieces, I think. You can use a bowl for this, but I'm going to use a colander. That way any whey that is still released just goes right into the pan that it's sitting on. Now I'm going to cover this. Back in this bowl of whey, which should be about 100 degrees. We want to keep any liquid, whether you're using water or whey, make sure it's about 100 degrees, and then this is going to help expel any more whey. So we're going to try to keep it nice and warm, and then every 15-20 minutes I'm going to come in, move the blocks around, restack them, and let it sit again. So this whole process of unwrapping it and flipping them all, that process takes between 1 and 2 hours. All right, let's see where we're at. This has been about, I would say, close to 2 hours. And I've got a plate here, kind of like a bowl. And I filled it with water. And I was kind of using this as a weight. And it also had warm water in it, so that helped keep the curds, the cheese curds, warm. And let's take a look here. So about every 15 minutes I've been flipping these, taking them out, flipping them. So I think it's firmed up quite a bit. I'm not sure that there's too much more whey in here to drip out. So we're going to take this to the cutting board. We're just going to actually cut this up. And this will be our curd. So you cut this to the size that you want your cheese curds to be. Take these and cut them in kind of bite-sized pieces is what I do. And set them in a bowl. Alright, here we go. This is the big bowl of cheese curds. And they kind of have a texture of cooked chicken breast, like that. But now is the time where we're going to add salt. And salt is something you kind of got to be careful with. Just because you don't want to over salt it, because over salting it is going to leave you with salty cheese, and that's not good. So I am going to say a ½ teaspoon per gallon of milk. So I did 4 gallons, so I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. And that's it. I'm not going to add any extra. And if it needs salt later, we can always add it later. The salt will actually expel more of the whey. And so what we're going to do is lay these out on some parchment paper and let them dry further. These can sit out to finish their ripening for another 72 hours. And they will continue to ripen and change in flavor. Now the squeakiness of these is only going to stay squeaky for maybe 12 hours or so. And then they lose their squeakiness. But they're still delicious, and this is a fresh cheese, so these have to be eaten fairly quickly. Put them in the refrigerator after you've let them air dried for a while. I've just got parchment paper over a pan, and I'm going to go ahead and lay these out so that they can air dry. Now you want to air dry them for 12 to 24 hours. Thanks for watching, everyone.